Hello my friends, it's episode 27. Let's finish up. The screen winks to life at your approach. Background count. Dr. Jake Hansen is one of the world's foremost experts in mana dynamics. He's taken a break from his own research to travel to my lab. Since he's arrived, he's spent the better part of the day poring over reams of data that my team collected. Straightening, he looks me in the eye and his normally jovial expression has turned grim. We're in trouble, Liz, he says. Dr. Hansen's publication confirms what I already know. Still I wince. I was hoping to find something to prove me wrong. To explain why we're in trouble, I'll first introduce you to a piece of meta-magical terminology to you, background count. In harmonic theory circles, the term background count refers to the intensity of magical saturation in a location. A rating of 0 is neutral and the amount of concentrated mana in a location increases, the scale goes up. Outside of freak mana storms, the highest background counts ever recorded have come from places like Hiroshima and Auschwitz, which have been holding steady at a rating of 5 for as long as they've been measured. Conventional wisdom has always been that extraordinary circumstances create strong background counts. Instances of great physical or emotional turmoil, be they positive or negative, can warp the magical environment of a place and cause its background count to rise. But in recent months, my lab has recorded a disturbing trend. A steady global increase in the world's background count has been observed in every location we've measured, from Germany to the Antarctic. Locations that used to be neutral now carry a measurable background count of 1.2. And those with high count locations like Hiroshima and Auschwitz, they've exploded into full-fledged mana storms. This brings you back into the trouble we're all in, though that term might be a bit underselling it. Deep shit is probably closer to the mark. The higher the world's background count rises, the less predictably magic will behave. Spells and rituals that we rely on are already beginning to fail us. If we do nothing, it is conceivable, maybe even probable, that magic will become too dangerous to use in our lifetime. If we no longer use magic, it will in turn be impossible for us to solve the problem. Back in my lab, Dr. Hansen is still staring. You need to get the word out about this, Liz, he says. He tells me, I'll get back to you, the community needs to know. He's right, of course. We as a community need to pool our resources to find a way to reverse this trend, and we need to do it quickly. If we do nothing, we might soon find ourselves outpaced by a rapidly changing magical environment, unable to adapt to the world as it changes around us. In trouble indeed. Crime wave. Horizon Corporation newsroom flickers onto the screen. The anchor wears an easy smile, but there's no warmth in his eyes. Troubling news out of Geneva today. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime has released its annual report on the international violent crime statistics. According to its findings, violent crime across the globe has nearly doubled since September 2054. Surprisingly, this increase in violence has been steady across the board. It doesn't matter where you go, the murder rates are climbing. Even historically low crime countries such as Monaco and Liechtenstein have been impacted by this. The pandemic of violence respects no borders. The report doesn't speculate as to why the world has become more violent in the past year, but on popular Matrix sites, conspiracy theories are running wild. That's right, John, according to one user, he went by the name of Rollin' Thunder. The attacks are being caused by alien rays. They're driving us crazy, he wrote, getting us to kill each other before they invade. Another poster, who chose to remain anonymous, said that magic was the culprit. Every time something crazy happens to the world, magic is to blame. Whatever the cause, the trend doesn't appear to be slowing down. Just this morning, a mass shooting in Cass State of Arkansas left 22 dead and another 15 wounded. I'm going to pronounce it Arkansas just to annoy the Americans. We'll have more on that story when we come back. Music begins to blare and then the screen cuts to static. You find yourself back at the main menu. Parazoological threats. Rising tide. Standing at the laboratory of Dr. Jacob Okini, head of zoologist at the Institute of Primate Research in Karen, Kenya, strapped to a reinforced examination table is a creature unlike anything I've ever seen. This thing is approximately the size and shape of a gibbon, but has 6 mouths arranged in a ring around a pale, grub-like head. It's disgusting. Dr. Okini, I don't know, seizes my reaction and laughs. What you see now is nothing, he tells me. When it was alive, it killed 6 men, ripped the faces and genitals off of 2, and bathed in the other 4 in some sort of caustic fluid. All the while it was laughing like hyena laughing. No, it was laughing like a man. He sees my brow furrow because he continues on. It's not a simple animal, Dr. Elder. It acted with purpose when it killed those men. And the only surviving witness tells me it grew fat on their screams. Sure enough, the creature's belly does look distended. I know the thing is dead, but it doesn't stop me from edging away. Doctor goes on to tell me many similar creatures have been captured throughout the jungles of Nairobi. Monkey-like things with bizarre mutations and vicious temperaments. Each has been different enough from the others to defy classification. This one had a cluster of eyes, an extra set of legs, and while that one had a coat of quills and a rasping mouth of a lamprey. The emergence of magic some 40 years ago put a new wrinkle into biological fieldwork. New species are being discovered all the time, but this is something different. These creatures that have been popping up recently fall outside of any meaningful system of classification. And what's more, I've conducted enough autopsies on them to know that they do not belong here. I pressed him for clarification on that point. What I mean to tell you is that their internal anatomy is all wrong. It doesn't even make sense. These creatures could not exist were it not for magic. 6 months ago I would have told you that they could not exist at all. The story is the same across the globe. Strange creatures of myriad shapes and descriptions appearing out of nowhere, along acting with intelligence and malice, killing for the pleasure of it. Comparing the results of my own magical research to Dr. Okini's observations, an unsettling picture begins to emerge. As I reported in the last edition of SMQ, the magical background count of the world is rising, and with more mana that saturates our environment, the more of these strange creatures we see. These things, whatever they are multiplying, and they're getting bigger. If we as a community fail to find a solution to this problem, we'll have much bigger things to worry about than our ability to practice magic. The ecosystem of our planet is changing around us. One-way flow of mana into our world is making the Earth less and less suitable for human habitation, and more suitable for the horrors that are invading our world. The clock is ticking, people. We are running out of time. So what? His virus just causes magic to leak into the world. Or the dragons were consuming the magic or something. The dragons were good all along. Terminal screen winks to life as you approach the upper left-hand side of the screen. A globe spins. The remainder of the display is filled with a text menu. Elvish nations. Early this morning, Elvish nations of Tir Tiragire and Tir Donok went dark, sealing their borders and severing all communications with their neighbouring states. In the wake of this development, California Free State and UCAS have begun to strengthen their own borders with Tir Tiragire. Looks to me like they're hunkering down, military analyst Sarah Alvarez told us, preparing themselves for a defensive war. This is unusual for a couple of reasons. One, there's been no recent indications of hostilities between the Tir nations and their immediate neighbours, and two, the Tir nations are located on different continents from each other. Short of a global conflict, I can't see what could threaten both Tir Nanog and Tir Tiragire. Maybe the Council of Princes knows something that the rest of us don't. Whatever they're thinking, it's making a lot of people nervous. As of the writing of this article, no official statements from Tir Tiragiri's Council of Princes or Tuther Danans of Tir Nanog have been released. Alright, it's the corporate newsroom again. We're back with more details on tragic events in Australia. Horizon News' own Taylor Nguyen is live at the scene in Pyrmont. More in this breaking story. Taylor, are you with us? The monitor behind him comes to life and a grainy video feed flickers onto the screen. A Eurasian the newscaster stands on the edge of a scene of carnage. Clutching her microphone close, an orc in coverall stands beside her, blinking against the glare of the noonday sun. Yes, John, I'm here. What's happening out there? It's a real mess out there, John, an absolutely tragic situation. Just to refresh the viewers at home, the permanent mana storm that surrounds the city of Sydney. It was a benign mana storm, right? For most people, it was basically harmless. Yeah, that's right, John. Well, that mana storm exploded this morning into a new phenomenon that experts are calling a mana rift. I'm standing here in Pyrmont, and this is as close to Sydney as you can get. Security cordons are in place to keep traffic away, and being told it's not safe to venture any nearer. It's probably good that you're keeping your distance, Taylor. We're hearing some frightening things about this rift. Looking at the statement from renowned Hermetic theorist Elizabeth Alder, which I'm going to read to you now. This newly formed rift, again these are the words of Dr. Alder, have essentially dragged Sydney off of our plane of experience onto another. She goes on to say that the city and all of its people might still be out there somewhere, but they're no longer on this earth, not as we know it. That's what we're hearing out here too, John. The entire city of Sydney and everyone in it just gone, and they're placed a swirling ball of vibrant colours that stretches hundreds of metres into the sky. Our cameras will go haywire if we point them directly at the rift, so we can't show you that, but take it from me, it's spectacular and terrifying. Sounds scary, Taylor. It certainly is. It hasn't stopped some daring individuals here from doing what they can to try to help. She turns to face the orc, thrusting her microphone towards his face. He takes a reflexive half-step backwards. Sir, could you tell us your name and what you're doing here in Parliament today? Yeah, my name's Liam Foster. I'm just a local mechanic. Nothing special, you know. When I heard about what was happening, I thought I should do something, so I've organised a grassroots search and rescue effort. We're doing what we can to help these people. How have you tried to help the city of Sydney? What have you been doing so far? Well, we set up aid stations for anyone who comes back through the rift. If someone comes back through, they got food, water, blankets, that kind of thing. Also sent in a few drones, but lost contact with them as soon as they went in. Let's see, have you done anything else? We sent some volunteers, brave chaps, you know. They walked into the rift itself, carrying food and water and throwing rope lines. My own cousin went in there. Haven't seen any of them come back yet, but there's still hope. Chilling news, Taylor. We'll be rooting for those brave volunteers here back at home. Thanks, John. Yeah, thanks. Stay tuned for more news about the Sydney Rift as it comes in. And for more on-location reporting from our own Taylor Nguyen. You know, it's obviously related to his virus. Or the death of the dragons. You can't let the evil win. I mean, you've got to have a bad ending for doing this. I don't know, it would have been bolder if this was a good ending. I would have been more impressed by the game had it been. Honestly, Doc, I don't know. You said all this adds up to something. I'd be damned if I know what it is. Nor do I. Not exactly, at least, but I can make an educated guess. Look at a natural, if you prefer, paranatural catastrophe. Something has thrown off the balance between magic and reality. Magical background count in the world is rising, and the Earth becomes more and more mana rich. We're seeing increasingly devastating results. Paranatural disasters like the mana rift that consumes Sydney, widespread madness, and most terribly, the appearance of dangerous new paranormal life forms. Predators that couldn't survive in mana-poor environments are flooding into our world, and as the mana level continues to rise, larger and more dangerous things are appearing. In order to solve the problem, we need to plug the leak, but we have more immediate concern. The creatures that are invading our world are growing larger and more dangerous at an exponential rate. Our first priority must be to find a way to combat these things. Then we will tackle the long-term challenge of staunching a tide of mana that is flowing into our world. These things are magical in nature. Seems to me we need a magical solution. Magic might work in the short term, but as global background count rises, it becomes less and less reliable as a solution. We need a weapon that won't fail us before the job is done. Unfortunately, conventional weapons haven't done much to hurt these creatures. Even small ones have shown extraordinary resilience to physical damage, and bigger ones have been popping up that are nigh unkillable. There was an amoeboid thing with many tongues terrorizing the sky above Burroughs Ares, and they tried to use helicopter gunships to shoot it down. They eventually succeeded, but not without it destroying half of their own city in the process. Bad business. Maybe a biological control could work. Perhaps a natural enemy could be found to fight these things, or at the very at least buy some time. What about germ warfare? You did it with Panacea. Maybe you could do it again. No, it took me over 40 years to develop Panacea, and I'd be lucky to live another 6 months. Besides, the psychology of these creatures is so alien, I wouldn't know where to begin. We need something so powerful to keep these things at bay, but intelligent enough to be capable of reason. You mean like a dragon? Yes. Vauclair stands there for a moment, blinking, then his frail body begins to tremble. The cigarette drops from his lip and falls to the floor. Oh god, we did this. I did this. Breathe, Vauclair, you still have a world to save. Killing of the dragons, it must have thrown out the world out of balance somehow. Killing of the dragons, it must have thrown the world out of balance somehow, but how was I to know? There was no signs, no indications, there was no nothing. What I did was right. Looked that way to me too, Doctor. But it wasn't right, was it? I acted without considering all of the variables, didn't even consider that such variables could exist. I was blind. I was a fool. Or, this is just badly written. I mean, could also be that. Could just be badly written. There has to be a reason why this cannot be allowed to be the good ending, because it's an amoral ending, it's unethical, and therefore it must end in disaster. But that's not how real life works. In real life, the unethical people end up at the top. Unfortunately. But hey, it's a story, it's a game. But I would have been more impressed if they had been like, the bad guys win and the world is a better place. And taking the moral path would have resulted in a worse world, but that's not where we're going. Maybe, but we can still turn this around. Nothing can make this right, nothing at all. There's no fixing this, only I can atone for it, and so I shall. He pulls out a vintage Luger handgun. Gingerly, he grips it with his right hand and raises it to his temple. Pleasure working with you, Edmund. Sorry I asked you to come all this way for nothing. Now turn away, if you please. The instant you begin to move, the old man's figure jerks the trigger. For a moment, nothing more than a split second. Really, you can see the fear and sorrow on Von Claire's face. Time seems to slow, and all at once it speeds up again, and Erdrin Von Claire's body crumples to the floor. The screen of the console is slick with Von Claire's blood. It looks like you can unlock the door to the inner lab from here. New strain of Vitas. Virally induced toxic allergy syndrome. Vitas is extremely infectious and highly lethal. 2 previous outbreaks of the disease killed billions, reducing the world's population by a quarter. Given the global pandemic of worm flu and the recent extinction of the dragons, the announcement of a new strain of Vitas has caused considerable panic throughout the UCAS, but local news sources from towns surrounding Chicago have offered conflicting reports about the CZ and what it is meant to contain. According to these dissenting voices, the true danger from Chicago comes probably in the form of giant man-eating cockroaches. Assuming these reports are not a hoax, creatures have cut a bloody swath across every town they've appeared in, and the flow of insects out of Chicago, so there's no sign of slowing down. We reached out to our contacts in the UCAS government for comment on these allegations, but at the time of this report they've not returned our calls. This morning, a mere 7 days after construction, the UCAS federal government has officially abandoned its Chicago containment zone, admitting that CZ has not performed up to expectations. President Thomas Steele has appealed for assistance from corporate interests to stem the tide of monstrous insects flowing out of Chicago. A whistleblower from Aero's Macro Technology has leaked information that the corporation is planning to bomb Chicago. Meta-human casualties have been deemed acceptable losses by the company's think tanks, and the government has allegedly signed off on the plan. In light of these allegations, protesters and supporters of the plan have clashed in bloody violence across UCAS. Spokesmen from the UCAS and Ares Macro Technology have derided these allegations as patently false and have urged UCAS citizens to remain calm as they work together to engineer a solution to the Chicago crisis. Nuclear devastation in Chicago. A massive nuclear strike launched early this morning has wiped the city of Chicago off the map. Nothing moves in the wreckage. A city of over 4 million people has been reduced to ash. An Ares spokesman announced that, while regrettable, this morning's actions were necessary. Chicago have posed an inestimable threat to the safety and security of UCAS as a whole. And the failure of the CZ, a nuclear strike, was deemed to be the most viable remaining option. Meanwhile, reports of intact spirit activity in the surrounding municipalities continues to flow in. There are rumours of small hives forming in Aurora, Arlington Heights, Maryville, and isolated reports of insect spirit activity have been reported as far north as Milwaukee. Scientists remain baffled as to why insect spirit activity has experienced such exponential growth in such a short period of time. Researchers have advanced theories involving everything from climate change to last year's worm flu outbreak, but there is no clear consensus at the time of writing this article. The world is doomed. Standing by the observation window for Schwinger's chamber, you find a familiar figure, Aldrin. In his hardened armor, he's every bit as massive as you remember him. This is it, the place where the magic happens. Feels a lot bigger now the dragon's gone. Gunshot I heard, was it the Doc? Yeah, it was me. Yeah, it was. Well, here's to you, Doc. Here's to Vauclair. Liquor slides down your throat like motor oil. It's sickly sweet with notes of juniper and hay. Danish mjød. Mjød. The flavour lingers on your tongue long after you finish drinking. Aldrin accepts the bottle back with a nod, then takes a long drink. When he finishes, he holds the bottle to the light. Gazing idly through the glass at the bronze liquor inside, a wistful expression crosses his face. Gotta hand it to the old man, he really did it. He changed the world. He did, not for the better, but he changed things alright. Better or worse, who the fuck cares? The world was going to hell anyway. Doc sped things up a little is all, made life more interesting for you and me. Probably wouldn't have lived long enough to see the end if he hadn't. Is that what this was about for you? You wanted something like this to happen? Why wouldn't I? The world's never done shit for me. Everything I am I had to take for myself. So I say, fuck the world. I'm looking forward to watching it die. Fair enough. Of course, if you prefer, you can always follow the doc's example. Take the coward's way out. He pats a pistol on his hip. You recognize it instantly. It's the same hand cannon used to kill Amsel. Guess I couldn't fault you for it. Things are going to get ugly over the next few years. Give me the bottle. I'm not running from this. I'll see it through to the end, just like you will. That's the spirit. Drink up and don't be bashful. I got a crate of the stuff. End is nigh after all. Wouldn't want it to reach it sober. You stand there for a while, holding the bottle at the neck, staring at Freshwing's old pen. Staring at the place that gave birth to the end of the world. Silence stretches, but that's alright. You don't have anything pressing to do anyway. You've got time. All the time in the world. By 2065, meta-humanity has been reduced to an endangered species, huddling in the sewers, subway tunnels, and underground bunkers. Desperate clusters of survivors fight with one another for dwindling supplies of food and water. They've long since learned to carry out their conflicts in silence. Noise can attract the predators that now dominate the Earth's surface. To draw the attention of a horror is to invite a hideous death. On the surface, horrors congregate in rolling swarms. They slither, scuttle, and crawl over the bones of meta-human civilization, hunting in packs, eviscerating anything with a heartbeat. The largest of these monstrosities hang impossibly in the sky above the ruins of the world's great cities, casting shadows that stretch miles across. These godlike leviathans gorge themselves on the residual misery of the long dead. Slowly but surely they pick the carcass of mankind's reign clean. Hope is a thing of the past. Meta-humanity has reached its end, but the scourge that has replaced it has just begun. Wow, that was a boring ending. Let me just kill the sound. Okay, so that's it for that ending. I suppose I could just go ahead and do the normal ending as well. Just so that you guys can see it. What bothers me about it is, like, they couldn't just let that be a good ending, right? That's the sad part for me, is they could have made the bold move and had that be a good ending for humanity. And you know, create that morally grey paradigm between doing something evil for the greater good, which, you know, potentially in this case could be hugely for the greater good, or doing something that is, you know, ethical and correct and good, and that resulting in, you know, the continued, like, misery of the Shadowrun world. Because if you don't know the lore of Shadowrun, like, what I'm saying only really makes sense if you've immersed yourself in Shadowrun material, but the dragons are just basically an absolutely massive burden on humanity in Shadowrun. They control everything, and they send tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people to their deaths in wars over territory and material, you know, just for the sake of satisfying their endless greed. They're basically a metaphor for the billionaire class that exists in real life, like untouchable, greedy, all-consuming, like, monsters. Sure, they're intelligent and they can be negotiated with, but that just makes them more dangerous. So, you know, in all of Shadowrun's lore, pretty much, the vast majority of the dragons are just they have a huge negative impact on humanity, and, you know, their machinations results in the deaths of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, like, every year, basically. So if you are a long-term fan of Shadowrun, Like, exterminating the dragons actually could strike you as a good idea, even if it is an evil ending. Be like, oh, what would happen if those evil wretches were gone? Things would get better. But no, they had to invent a reason why the dragons can't go. And apparently that reason is that the world's mana will increase until everything goes crazy. So, anyway. But I've read a modest amount of Shadowrun material, but not all of it. So it'd be interesting to hear from anyone who's read a lot of Shadowrun books and stuff. As to what else is there in the canon in regards to dragons. Because, you know, the dragons are very much set up as the bad guys in Shadowrun, which is why you end up killing one in the SNES game. You kill Drake. It's the same thing. They are meant to be like a big problem, and even in this game, you know, it kind of acknowledges like no one will be sad to see them gone. But anyway, it was the coward's way out. I think it would have been more interesting if the dragon death ending came out as a net win for humanity, rather than just inventing a reason why the why it results in the apocalypse. Anyway, I'm not going to say this is it for this campaign. I'll probably just do the other ending, actually. Just so that you guys can, those who have not played the game, can just see what the normal ending is like. But I thought I'd do the evil ending because I never did it myself when I first played through this game back in, what was it, 2012, 2013, something like that. Oh look, the buttons are broken. I actually can't click them. That's weird. Oh, that's really trippy. That's very, very trippy. 2015? Is it really 2015? I mean, that was still 10 years ago. Yeah, 2015, I guess. It's when I beat the game originally. $383 kills and 190 karma spent. I killed a lot less people in this run, funnily enough. I saved less too. Okay, so anyway, that's it for now. Join me next time. We'll have a look through the other ending, and then we'll move on to the next game. So I will see you in the next episode.